Shalom, everybody. Thank you very much for joining these lessons. Today we'll be carrying on our 7 Noahide commandments, as we have discussed in the previous videos, that we will be going through this series where we do one mitzvah per week. So this week we'll be covering sexual crime, which is part of the 7 Noahide commandments. So, to start this, actually, I want us to go and we read the book of Leviticus chapter 18. I'll be reading from Tanakh, the Stone Edition here. So I want us to quickly go there. So in the book of Leviticus, it starts by saying, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, speak to Bnei Israel and say to them. And maybe one might ask a question, say, but is this not strictly for the Jews? What is going to be outlined in this chapter? Let me say it also applied to Bnei Noach, what we're going to read here from verse 1 until the last verse of this chapter. You'll see that it also applied to Bnei Noach. But just to maybe to convince you a bit that it applies also to Bnei Noach, not only to Bnei Israel, let's read first few verses and verse 26:7 also. Let's read it. It says here, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, I am Hashem your God. Do not perform the practice of the land of Egypt in which you dwelled, and do not perform practice of the land of Canaan to which I bring you. Let me just stop there. You can see that whatever that is going to be outlined in this chapter are the practices that are forbidden for Bnei Israel. And these very same practices that are forbidden, they were practiced in Egypt, and also the Canaanites are practicing these things. But let's find out, are they only forbidden for the Israelites and not for any other nation? Let's go to verse 27. And verse 27 says, maybe let's start 24. Do not become contaminated through any of this, for through all of this, the nations that I expel before you became contaminated. So we can already see that there was an expectation from Hashem towards the Canaanites. He expected certain behavior from them, and they failed. And in fact, when we carry on here, it says the land became contaminated, and I recalled its iniquity upon it, and the land vomited or disgorged its inhabitant. So we can see that God removed the Canaanites because of this. This was another reason why God removed the Canaanites from the land, because of these practices. And remember, Canaanites are not Israelites, are not Jews. And they were removed because there was certain expectation, certain behavior that was expected of them. However, they failed to live according, I believe, to the oral tradition, oral laws that were given to Noah, and that was passed through generation to generation. And God cannot expect from anyone anything that he was not informed of before. So God informed the people here on earth that you cannot partake in these behaviors. And therefore, when you go against that, God can then come and judge you for those actions. So we can see here that God expected the Canaanites not to practice those kind of behavior that they were practicing in Canaan. Egyptians also had this backed practices. However, because the land Eretz Israel is a holy land, they were vomited out, they were disgorged. You see, it's different from Egypt. Egypt were not removed from that land because it's not Eretz Israel. The other one is Eretz Israel, and because Eretz Israel is holy, God then visited the iniquities of the land, and the land then vomited the Canaanites out. And therefore, God also warns, if you would look at this, it says, verse 28, let not the land disgorge you for having contaminated it, and it disgorged the nation that was before you. So he's warning them. It vomited the Canaanites. Do not follow after the same practices, because the land will do the same with you. The land will do the same with you. In fact, there is let's see, I think it's in the book of Jeremiah. Yes, Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 9 says, so it came to pass through her casual harlotry that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and trees. So we can see, we'll see when we continue with this, that Bnei Israel, they also later in the years practiced the very same behavior, and the land vomited them out. And so I think I've made it clear that these prohibitions that we find in the book of Leviticus, they don't only apply to Bnei Israel, they also apply to Bnei Noah. So let's go and hear what Leviticus chapter 18 has for us. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, I am Hashem your God. Do not perform the practice of the land of Egypt in which you dwelt. Do not perform the practice of the land of Canaan to which I bring you. Do not follow their traditions. Carry out my laws and safeguard my decrees to follow them. I am Hashem your God. You shall observe my decrees and my laws, which men shall carry out and which he shall live. I am Hashem. Now, from verse 6, that's where now we get these prohibitions. Any man shall not approach his close relative to uncover her nakedness. I am Hashem. The nakedness of your father, the nakedness of your mother, you shall not uncover. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's shame. The nakedness of your sister, whether your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether born to you, who may remain in the home, or born to who must remain outside of it. You shall not uncover their nakedness. The nakedness of your son's daughter, or your daughter's daughter, you shall not uncover their nakedness, for they are your own shame. The nakedness of your father's wife, the nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, who was born to your father, she is your sister. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's sister, you shall not uncover. She is your father's flesh. The nakedness of your mother's sister, you shall not uncover, for she is your mother's flesh. The nakedness of your father's brother, you shall not uncover. Do not approach his wife, she is your aunt. The nakedness of your daughters-in-law, the nakedness of your daughter-in-law, you shall not uncover. She is your son's wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your brother's wife, you shall not uncover. It is your brother's shame. The nakedness of a woman and her daughter, you shall not uncover. You shall not take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness. They are your close relative. It is a depraved plot. You shall not take the woman's in addition to her sister, to make them rivals, to uncover the nakedness of one upon the other in her lifetime. You shall not approach a woman in her time of unclean separation. to uncover her nakedness. You shall not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife, to contaminate yourself with her. You shall not present any of your children to pass through Molech, and do not profane the name of your God. I am Hashem. You shall not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. It is abomination. Do not lie with any animal to be contaminated with it. A woman shall not stand before an animal for mating. It is perversion. Do not become contaminated through any of this, for through all of this, the nations that I expelled before you became contaminated. The land became contaminated, and I recalled its iniquity upon it, and the land disgorged its inhabitant. But you shall safeguard my decrees and my judgment, and do not commit to any of this abomination. I will stop here, but I think you understand that all these things that have been outlined in the book of Leviticus chapter 18, both Bnei Israel and Bnei Noahides, they are not supposed to be indulging in such practices. As I said before, the Canaanites indulge in such practices, and the land of Israel, Eretz Israel, vomited them out. Where they come from in Egypt, they also practice the same. But God is actually saying to Bnei Israel, do not follow their practices, their abomination. Now let's move on to a very interesting, very famous verse in the book of Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Let me see. It says, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. It's a very interesting verse here. And actually, when there are many commands or sub-commands that we can derive from this verse. As we have already explained in the previous chapters, the 7 laws are actually 7 categories of the laws. And therefore, you can already see under sexual immorality or sex crime, we've got many other sub-commandments that we find below them. And so let's read this verse carefully. It says, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So there are a few things that you can learn from this verse. And the first one, it says, therefore a man shall leave his father. In fact, when you read a Jewish tradition, they will explain it to you that when it says, therefore a man shall leave his father, it refers to his father's wife. And then it says, and his mother. So you might be asking yourself, but it says here mother, and the mother will be the wife to the father. Not necessarily. It's possible that the wife, the father of the man might have been married to another woman who is not the mother to this man. And therefore, that's why the Bible is very clear. So when it comes to the mother, it's simple meaning like that it refers to the mother, meaning this man cannot approach his father's wife, whether it's his mother or not. You cannot approach. And then that's number 1. Number 2 is do not, you leave your mother, okay? Do not have such thoughts towards your mother. Do not have such thoughts towards your father's wife, right? And then the other one would be, let's see, it says, and therefore it says, and cling to his wife. And so you hear very well that it says, and this man shall cling to his wife. So the third thing that we learn from this is you do not cling to other people's wife, you cling to your wife. And therefore, be very careful that you leave other people's wife. Cling to your own wife. The very same thing that we get from this cling to your wife does not say cling to another man. A man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife. And therefore, we already see the prohibition against what you call men getting married to another man. A man cling to his wife, does not cling to another man, does not cling to husband. He clings to his wife. And they shall become one flesh. They become flesh. This union is capable and can also be able to bring children to this earth. And therefore, you already see this a double emphasis on you as a man cannot be seen with another man. Now, already that we are talking about homosexuality, let's go back. Let's actually look at the book of the one that we read, the book of Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 22. It says, "You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. A male is forbidden to engage in sexual intercourse with another male, whether an adult or a minor of any age." So we can see that the Bible is clear. I mean, can it get clearer than this? The Bible is clear. You shall not engage in sexual intercourse with another man. And so we already see that the Canaanites and the Egyptians used to have this kind of relations where a man will get married to another man, where a woman will get married to another woman, and that is abomination according to Hashem, according to the Torah. What about another thing that we find here is it was not only men who was getting married to another man, but also women. They will then, a woman will get married to another woman or lie with another woman. And that is abomination. We know that those were the practices of the Egyptians, those were the practices of the Canaanites, and therefore we need to distance ourselves from such behavior. Okay, let's carry on. Bestiality, we have already covered it in when we looked at Leviticus chapter 18 verse 23, that says, "Do not have sexual relations with an animal and defile yourself with it." A woman must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. That is perversion. Bestiality, it's out. Can you imagine the Canaanites and Egyptians were engaging in this kind of behavior, this kind of practices? What about transgender? Very interesting one as well. You might have seen the news. I think I saw it earlier today, or is it yesterday, where a transgender man was part of a competition. I think it was swimming competition. I can't remember clearly, but he came position 1. He won, right? And he was swimming with women, and he's a trans. Can you imagine that? But let me put it in perspective. Let me say I wake up and say I'm a child. I'm a child, and you look at me like a grown man like you, and like, no. Do not disrespect me. I'm a child. And therefore, you need to respect what I say to you. Have respect. I'm a child. And I go and enter tournament or something where I am I've the kids there that I'm competing with, and I come number 1. Will people be proud of me though? Do you see how far this thing can go? What we learn is no matter what you do to change yourself, to the eyes of Hashem, you are still who you are. That does not change who you are. You can go change things, remove this and put that, but that does not change who you are. So we have covered all these things, and rape also. We as men are not allowed to force ourselves to women. Women are not allowed to force themselves to men. In fact, let me take it a little bit one step further. You as a married man, you're not allowed to force yourself into your wife. It is rape. It is not permitted. Do not force yourself into your woman. Even if she is your wife, you're not allowed. And adultery. Let's see adultery. Let's go to Genesis chapter 20, verse 3. It says, "But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Indeed, you are a dead man, because you are a woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Even though Abraham lied, God appeared to the king and says, "You do not do that." Let's go again to Genesis chapter 39, verse 9. Says, "There is no one greater in the house than I." Is it this one? Okay. "Nor has kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" You can see, even during those days, the kings of other nations, they understood clearly that it is an abomination, it is a wickedness for you to take someone's wife. It is forbidden. Forbidden. Run away from other men's wife. Cling to your wife and your wife alone. Okay, on prostitution, let's read Leviticus chapter 19, verse 29. It says, "Do not prostitute your daughter to cause her to become a harlot, lest the land fall into harlotry, and the land become full of wickedness." And Genesis chapter 38, verse 15 says, "When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot because she had covered her face." So what I can say to you is, it is forbidden for Gentiles or Bnei Israel to practice this kind of sexual immorality. We have to run away from this kind of behavior. I think today I will just end it here. I think we have covered a lot. Maybe one more verse on harlotry is Proverbs chapter 23, verse 27 says, "For a harlot is a deep pit, and a seductress is a narrow well." I think it's clear. I think it's clear. And please, let's follow the laws of Hashem. Let's live a righteous life, so that we may be called the righteous Gentiles, the righteous of other nations. And let's be an example to other people by the way we conduct ourselves, the way we speak, the way we conduct our business. Let us be an example to others. Let's not talk a lot, but let's lead by our actions. I thank you.